I'm Gerald Ford, and I'm here with a guide to writing recipes that don't suck. Have you ever pulled out a recipe and thought, what is this even saying? Or worse, followed a recipe perfectly only to end up with a result that's wildly off the mark? Doesn't look anything like the picture that you see? The reality is, not all recipes are created equal. The longer you've been in the kitchen, the more likely you are to have experienced this firsthand. To me, a great recipe is more than just a list of ingredients and a list of half-assed procedures. It's a blueprint for predictable outcomes. And without structure, you're gambling with every single plate. Now in this video, I'm going to show you what I think makes for a better result from one recipe over another. And if you find yourself rewriting a recipe 3 or 4 times just to make it usable for your team, then this video is going to help you fix that for good. At the end of the day, I need my team to execute consistently with accuracy. Now, over the years, I've written hundreds of recipes. Hell, I've rewritten more than I could even try to begin and count. Some solid, others, well, they taught me that clarity is infinitely more valuable than creativity. Great recipes represent the best of all worlds. They reflect our style, they empower the team regardless of the supervisor that's on, and they can be completed with minimal one-on-one direction. Great recipes are really functional, and once you understand what separates a trash recipe from a treasure, you'll write in a way that delivers consistency and creativity. Now let me walk you through the 12 keys that I use to make sure my recipes produce great results when I sit down and I write. So let's get right into it. Key number 1, use a thorough and complete template. Now, this is something that's going to evolve over time. Don't stress about making it perfect from the start. And this is what I use now. But online platforms like Opsy or Mies have the research behind them to generate complete recipes, and they're worth checking out if you haven't already. Now, I haven't fallen in love with any of those platforms, so I still use Excel sheets, and this is what my template looks like. This is the template that I use when I write recipes now. And if you'd like to grab that template, hit the link below the video for recipe template. 2, the recipe needs a clear title that when searching would get you back to it. A good title sets expectations and makes things clear. Think roasted beet salad versus roasted golden beet salad with pistachios and sherry vinaigrette. That makes it searchable. That makes it clear what the recipe is before having to open the file to figure it out. Next, step 3. I like to use searchable categories and classifications and organize and include as much information as possible, either by station, by course, by menu, by section, by temperature. All of that helps sort and makes the recipe searchable. I want to be able to hit the search bar and search for garmage cold salad, beet salad, and I want it to be able to come up. And if I include all of that in there, in that title, then I'm going to be able to find it more easily. And it definitely makes it easier when you're using a system like Google Drive, a digital binder, a Dropbox. And a bonus note, when you're saving that file, make sure to add the date. Include the outlet, include a meal period before the file name. That, again, makes it that much easier to find because you might just think of the time that you wrote the recipe or the season of the year, and it gets you back to it. Number 4, include a clear yield in the recipe. I think it's important to list how many portions the recipe makes, but not only that, what is the size of a portion? Once those two things are there, it's much easier to scale the recipe and have a prediction for the outcome. And I think this is crucial for ordering. It saves a tremendous amount of time in the prep, in the service, and in recipe adjustment as well. Time not spent here is time wasted repeatedly every time that recipe gets pulled. Next, make sure to use detailed ingredient specs. Avoid onion, and make sure that you specify variety, cut, even brand if it's appropriate. Specify weights and things like that, and we'll get into that in another minute here. But ambiguity in inputs equals unpredictable outputs, also known as chaos. Unpredictable outputs are not what we're looking for. And in my head, I'm always trying to drive to eliminate variables that lead to unpredictability. Next, step 6, map out concise production instructions. Not necessarily right as you're writing it, but make sure that you're looking through all of the steps in the production. And some questions that I like to ask that help me kind of round that out is, does the recipe include prep steps like wash, trim, peel? Does it account for all the steps in mise en place? And make sure you avoid phrases like combine all ingredients. The goal here is to make sure that you're giving clear enough instruction that when it is literally followed, it yields a literal result. Step 7, ensure accurate scalable quantities. Now, for example, if a recipe calls for 2 eggs, and make sure that when you scale the recipe, that it accurately scales and you're not scaling a recipe based on 1/4 of an egg. For me, I resolve this by trying to be in grams and in milliliters all the time. It makes life infinitely easier. So that way, if I need 100 grams of eggs and I need to scale that up by 10%, I can just add 10 more grams of eggs to the recipe. Saves me a lot of time, saves me a lot of energy in converting a recipe, and again, it makes ordering that much more consistent and predictable. Without accuracy and consideration of those units, scaling becomes impossible, and the house of cards that built on top of it falls. Step 8, lay out step-by-step instructions for the procedure. And I want you to think as a cook who's never spent a day of their life with you or one of your sous chefs. Can they follow it? Can they follow it start to finish and replicate the result? And I want you to think that way, and then you're going to test it at the end by giving it to somebody who's worked with you as little as humanly possible to find the holes in the process. 9, keep a revise date on your recipe. Use a version control system to eliminate mistakes and confusion. If it's not dated, how do you track? How do you know if it's the latest version? How do you know when it was updated? And just keep an archive. So for me, I keep an archive in all of my folders where all of the old versions go once they're updated, and then I keep a version and date control on the recipe itself. Step 10, build in accountability. I want to know who wrote the recipe or who revised the recipe. Who wrote it, who approved it, because for me, ownership builds trust. And that allows follow-up when something's off. If something's going wrong with a recipe, I need to be able to figure out where that started. Accountability leads to resolve, and accountability allows me to not have to be the only person who types recipes. I have other things to do. 11, make the recipe scalable. Can it easily be doubled or halved or increased by 10% or decreased by 30% without compromising quality or wasting time with yield? Having a scalable outcome is a must, especially in the world that we live in with constantly modifying numbers, cover counts, party counts. Being able to scale recipes easily is a huge advantage. And finally, the last piece is to test the recipe for completion. And I can't express how much time I wasted putting recipes out there for the team to use before an actual test phase. I don't think it needs to spend a ton of time there, but it at least needs to be put in front of people who really don't know how to make the recipe to see if the recipe actually works. I really get to see this when I'm working with chefs who have it together and they're getting ready to write a book, and they have their team in place who's testing through all of their processes and all of the recipes to really make sure that they're bulletproof and dialed in. Is the recipe actually ready to be used by somebody who doesn't know how the recipe is supposed to be cooked? And that to me is the final test to make sure it works. Attach a photo if possible. I would include visual references. The more you do that, the more you increase the odds of a recipe being replicated properly. And now let's close out the whole loop. Let's bring it all full circle. Although a recipe can simply be a note on paper, I encourage you to raise the standard in how you define what a recipe is. To me, it's an instruction manual. It's a training tool. It's basically a contract and a roadmap for my team to execute my vision. And from my experience, if the chef doesn't make it, nobody else is going to. Just abdicating that and leaving it to the sous chef to write all the recipes without checking up on that work leads to a result that I think everybody's familiar with. That can be predictably avoided. Now, to me, a great recipe that works does 3 things, and it does 3 things really well. It makes your food repeatable, it makes your team better, and it makes your vision completely scalable. So this is my last little encouragement to stop giving half-baked instructions. Write recipes that you know work regardless of who's cooking it and can easily be executed whether you're in the kitchen or not to save it. Now, if this video has helped you reframe the way that you write or think about recipes, do me a favor, like, share, and subscribe so that more chefs can benefit. And if you're at a point where you're looking for help in building a fully structured system for recipe development, kitchen leadership, and scaling your culinary vision, then book a call with me today, because that's exactly what I do. Join me as we go beyond the food and build a culinary program that endures and thrives. It's been a pleasure to spend the time with you, and I'll see you in the next video.